The house stood at the edge of Marlow, a solitary outpost where the town's last breath met the vast, open plain. It was a small structure, weathered to a silver grey by decades of harsh winds that swept down from the northern mountains, carrying the biting scent of sage and the ever-present promise of snow. Winter had claimed the land, burying it under a thick blanket of white. On this Christmas Eve, the windows of the house were dark, save for a single lamp burning in the front room. Its feeble light was no match for the frost that crept across the glass. Inside, Mai Lin sat in the simple wooden chair her husband, Chen, had crafted 23 years ago, before the fever took him and narrowed her world to the four walls of their home. At 51, her hands looked far older, their knuckles swollen from the relentless cold, her skin cracked despite the salve she applied each night. Her hair, more silver than black now, was pulled back in a tight braid. An hour ago, the stove had gone cold, and she hadn't bothered to feed it more wood. What was the use of heat when there was no one to share its warmth with? Outside, the wind rattled the shutters, the only sound besides the occasional creak of the house settling into the frozen ground. Marlow was just half a mile away, close enough to see the church steeple against the darkening sky, but far enough that the sounds of Christmas celebration, the carols, the laughter, never reached her door. It had been 3 years since she'd last gone to town. The whispers had become too much to bear after Margaret Henley remarked loudly that the Chinese widow had become strange, talking to herself in the mercantile, buying supplies for two when everyone knew she lived alone. Mai Lin hadn't been talking to herself. She had been talking to Chen, as she always did, asking which cut of meat he preferred, whether they needed more flour. But her husband had been gone for 20 years, and the town had decided grief had finally claimed her mind. It was easier to be seen as mad than to be pitied. The lamp flickered, its oil running low. Mai Lin watched the flame dance, contemplating letting it die, just sitting in the dark until morning. Christmas was just another day when you had no one. Her daughter's last letter sat on the table, its edges soft from 3 months of handling. Lian had married a banker in St. Louis and had 2 children Mai Lin had never met, her life too full to include a melancholy mother in a dying town. The letter promised a visit in the spring, the same promise made the year before, and the one before that. Mai Lin didn't blame her. Some were meant to escape, others were meant to stay and weather the storms until they became part of the landscape. A knock came so suddenly it made Mai Lin flinch, her hand flying to her chest. She sat perfectly still, wondering if she'd imagined it. The wind was a great mimic. But it came again, 3 solid raps against the wooden door, deliberate and patient. Slowly, her protesting joints creaking, she rose. No one came to her door anymore. Through the frosted glass, she could make out a tall figure and 2 smaller ones beside it. Her hand hesitated on the latch. Every instinct screamed for her to remain silent, to wait for them to leave. But some small, stubborn ember she thought long extinguished made her pull the door open. The cold rushed in, and then she saw them. A man stood on her porch, hat in one hand, a covered pot in the other. He was tall and lean, weathered by hard work. Lines were etched deep around his eyes, and grey threaded the dark hair at his temples. Behind him, 2 children huddled together, a girl of about 10 with wheat-colored braids and a boy no older than 7, his face half hidden in his sister's coat. Both stared at Mai Lin with wide, uncertain eyes. The man said, his voice rough but not unkind. "I apologize for the intrusion on Christmas Eve. I'm Ethan Hayes. These are my children, Anna and Tom." He gestured with the pot. "We brought supper, if you'll have us." Mai Lin stood frozen, the cold seeping through her thin dress. Strangers on her porch with food made no sense. "I don't," she began, her voice rusty from disuse. "I don't understand." "We're new to Marlow," Ethan explained, shifting his weight. The children pressed closer to him. "Got a small place a couple miles west. We were in town, and the Reverend's wife mentioned you might appreciate some company tonight. Said you'd been on your own for a while." Her chest tightened. Pity. The town had sent these strangers to check on the mad Chinese widow, to ease their Christian consciences. "That's kind," she said, her words flat. "But I'm fine." You should take that food to your family." "We are the family," the little boy, Tom, piped up, his voice small but clear. "It's just us three." Anna nudged him, but Ethan's expression softened. "My wife passed 2 years back," he said simply. "We've been moving around since, looking for a place to settle." The Reverend's wife. "She said you lost your husband some time ago. Thought maybe we could all use a hot meal and some company that understands." Mylin saw something in his eyes she recognized, the particular exhaustion that came from carrying grief like a stone in your chest. She wanted to close the door, to return to her solitude. But the boy was shivering, and the girl's cheeks were raw with cold. And Ethan Hayes was looking at her not with pity, but with a quiet resignation, as if he expected rejection but had learned to endure it. "It's roast chicken," he said. "And potatoes." Anna made biscuits. The wind gusted, sending snow spinning across the porch. Mylin felt a small crack appear in the wall she'd built so carefully. "I suppose," she heard herself say, "it would be wasteful to let good food get cold." She stepped back, opening the door wider. Ethan nodded once and ushered his children inside. As Mylin closed the door against the winter night, she realized that for the first time in years, her house held more than ghosts. Mylin watched as Ethan moved about her kitchen with a quiet efficiency. He set the pot on the stove, added wood to coax the fire back to life, and directed his children with small gestures. Anna found plates in the cupboard as if she'd navigated countless unfamiliar kitchens. Tom stood close to his father, occasionally glancing at Mylin as though she might vanish. "Please, sit," Mylin said, her voice still feeling foreign. The table was small, built for two by Chen during their first winter together. Now, 4 people sat around it, their knees nearly touching. The chicken was tender, the potatoes were steaming, and Anna's lopsided biscuits were golden and soft. "These are very good," Mylin said to the girl, who ducked her head with a smile. "Mama taught her," Tom offered, before an uncomfortable silence settled. Mylin saw Ethan's jaw tighten. "I'm sure your mother was a fine teacher," Mylin said carefully. Then, because the silence was worse, she added, "My husband made this table. Took him 3 tries to get the legs even." She hadn't spoken of Chen to anyone in years. "That's the best kind of furniture," Ethan said, "the kind made with stubbornness." "Were you married a long time?" Anna asked, then quickly apologized for her boldness. 23 years, Mylin said. The number felt both impossibly long and heartbreakingly short. "We had a daughter, Leanne. She lives in St. Louis now." "Does she visit?" Tom asked. Mylin's hands tightened on her fork. "She's very busy." Ethan cleared his throat. "We came from Wyoming. Had a ranch there. But after Rebecca died, it felt like the land remembered her better than I could bear. I'd see her everywhere and nowhere at once." Mylin understood this precisely. It was why she rarely left the house. Marlowe had belonged to her and Chen. To walk its streets without him felt like a betrayal. "So you just left?" "Running away, some might call it," Ethan admitted. "I call it survival. Sometimes you have to leave a place behind to keep living." The thought of leaving was foreign and dangerous to Mylin. This house was all she had left of Chen. They ate in a more comfortable silence after that, the kind that settles between people who find unexpected understanding. The lamp burned steadier now, refilled by Ethan without asking. Outside, snow began to fall in earnest, thick flakes turning the world soft and otherworldly. When the meal was finished, Ethan began to clear the plates, but Mylin stood abruptly. "I'll do that." As she reached for his plate, their hands touched, a brief, warm, and startlingly real contact. Mylin pulled back as if burned. She saw Ethan's expression shift, become more guarded. "We should head back," he said. "The snow's getting heavy." "Papa, can't we stay a little longer?" Tom asked. "It's warm here." Just then, a sound made Mylin's blood run cold, the unmistakable crack of a heavy, ice-laden tree branch breaking under the strain. Ethan moved to the window and pulled back the curtain. The snow was no longer falling, it was driving sideways in a white wall that obscured everything. "We need to go now," Ethan said quietly. But Mylin had seen storms like this before. "It's already worse," she stated. "You won't make it 2 miles in this. You'll lose the road." They both knew what happened to people lost in a prairie blizzard. She saw the calculation in Ethan's eyes, the father's protective instinct warring with the knowledge that she was right. "We'll wait it out," he said finally. Mylin almost told him that storms like this didn't pass in an hour, that they could last for days. But seeing the fear in the children's eyes, she held her tongue. "I have blankets," she said instead, "and enough wood to keep the fire going through the night." The words hung in the air. These strangers would have to stay. Ben yawned, and Anna put an arm around him. "There's a bedroom," Mylin heard herself say. "The children can sleep there." She led them to a door she hadn't opened in 3 years. Behind it was Leanne's room, preserved exactly as she had left it. She kept it for visits that never came, a monument to a time when she had been needed. Opening the door, she led them into the cold, dusty space. "It was my daughter's room," Mylin said, her voice a whisper. "We're grateful," Ethan said, and she knew he understood the cost of opening closed doors. She brought blankets and helped Anna make up the bed. Tom was already half asleep under the quilt. "Will you tell us a story?" he asked, looking at Mylin. "Mama used to tell us stories on Christmas Eve." Mylin's throat tightened. She couldn't remember the last time anyone had asked anything of her. "I don't know many stories." "Just one," the boy pleaded. So Mylin sat on the edge of Leanne's bed and told them about a New Year celebration from her own childhood, about the paper lanterns her father had made, each one a different animal, glowing in the winter dark. She spoke of the special dumplings her mother made only once a year, and the feeling of being surrounded by family. When she finished, Tom was asleep and Anna's eyes were heavy. James was waiting in the hallway. They walked back to the front room as the storm raged outside. "I haven't been in that room in 3 years, Mylin said suddenly. "I kept it like a shrine. After Rebecca died, I kept her sewing basket by her chair," James said after a long moment. "For months, I wouldn't let Anna use it. Finally," she said, "Mama would want me to sew her and I knew she was right. The keeping was for me, not for her." Tears burned behind Mylin's eyes, the first in years. "I don't know how to let go," she whispered. "Maybe," Ethan said gently, "you don't have to let go. Maybe you just have to make room for what comes next." And then, something inside her broke. The tears came, silent at first, then racking her body with 20 years of unshed grief. She sat in Chen's chair, her face in her hands, and wept. Ethan didn't offer empty words of comfort. He simply sat in the chair across from her, a patient, silent witness to her sorrow. When she finally lifted her head, she felt hollowed out, emptied. "I'm sorry." "Don't be." They sat in silence, listening to the storm. "Why did you really come here tonight?" she finally asked. He hesitated. "The truth? The Reverend's wife told me about you. Said you'd lost your way, shut yourself off. She meant it as a warning. But all I heard was someone who understood what it was like to have the world go on without you. I thought, maybe I came here for my kids, to show them survival was possible. But when I saw you in that doorway, I realized I came here for myself, too. To see if there was any point in trying." "And is there?" Mylin asked. "I don't know yet," Ethan said honestly. "But sitting here now, I think maybe there is." A small voice came from the hallway. It was Anna. "I heard crying. Is everything all right?" "Everything's fine," Mylin said, surprised by how steady her voice was. "Sometimes people need to cry. It doesn't mean something's wrong." Anna came and sat on the floor by the fire. "I cry sometimes," she confessed. "At night when Tom's asleep. I try to be quiet so Papa doesn't hear." Ethan's face contracted with pain. "Anna, it's all right," the girl said quickly. "I know you cry, too. I hear you sometimes. Love doesn't end when someone dies, My Lin found herself saying. It just has nowhere to go anymore. Anna looked at her with eyes far too old for her face. Where does it go then? My Lin thought about the love she'd locked away for Chen and Lian. I think it stays inside you. And maybe that's the hardest part. Carrying all that love with no one to give it to. But we're here, Anna said simply. You could give some to us. The innocent word struck My Lin with the force of a physical blow. Maybe, she whispered, maybe I could. The wind slammed against the house, and the lamp went out, plunging them into darkness save for the firelight. Stay still, My Lin said. I know this house blind. She moved through the familiar darkness, her hands finding the extra lamp oil by memory. When she relit the lamp, she saw Ethan watching her with something like respect. The storm's getting worse, he said. Then we'll weather it together, My Lin replied, feeling the truth of her words settle into her bones. Outside, the blizzard howled, but inside, for souls adrift on a sea of grief found themselves on the edge of something that might just be hope. My Lin woke to a profound silence. She had fallen asleep in Chen's chair. Across from her, Ethan slept, his breathing deep and even. Anna was curled on the rug near the fire, now just glowing embers. The wind had stopped. She rose stiffly and went to the window. Dawn was breaking, turning the snow-covered world pale gold and pink. The sky was a clear, brilliant blue. It's over, Ethan said quietly behind her. Yes, My Lin said, though she wasn't sure if she meant the storm or something else inside her. We should head back, he said after a moment,